I was a waitress living paycheck to paycheck, dreaming of just making rent on time. Then I served him. This man in a suit worth more than my car. He looked at me like I was the only person in the room. What happened next? It changed everything I thought I knew about love. Before we dive into this wild journey, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. And stick around till the end because I'm sharing the biggest lesson this whole experience taught me. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. My name is Nia, and 2 years ago, I was working double shifts at this upscale restaurant downtown. You know the type: white tablecloths, wine lists thicker than the Bible, customers who spent more on one dinner than I made in a week. I was 28 years old, living in a studio apartment with a leaky faucet I couldn't afford to fix. My feet hurt all the time. My student loans were choking me, and every night I'd count my tips, hoping I'd scrape together enough to cover rent and maybe, just maybe, have a little left over. I had dreams once, big ones. I wanted to be a writer, tell stories, make people feel something. But life had other plans. My mom got sick during my junior year of college, and I had to drop out to help with bills. By the time things stabilized, I was drowning in debt with no degree and a whole lot of what ifs keeping me up at night. So I smiled at rich people, brought them expensive steaks, and swallowed my pride every single shift. My best friend Lakeisha kept me sane. We'd known each other since we were 15, and she was the only person who really understood the hustle. She worked two jobs too, doing hair during the day and bartending at night. We'd meet up on our rare days off, eat cheap tacos, and dream about a life where we weren't always tired, where we could breathe without calculating the cost of that breath. Then one Tuesday night in October, everything changed. It was around 8:30, near the end of my shift. I was exhausted, ready to go home, soak my feet, and fall asleep watching reality TV. That's when he walked in, Dominic Sterling, though I didn't know his name yet. All I knew was that he was tall, had this presence that made the whole room shift, and wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car. He came in with three other business types, all sharp edges and confidence. I was their server, professional, polite, invisible, the way I'd learned to be. But when I approached the table to take their order, his eyes met mine, and something happened. I can't even explain it. It was like the air got thicker. He smiled at me, not the polite smile rich people give service workers, but a real smile that reached his eyes. And when I spoke, he listened. Actually listened. Like what I was saying mattered, even though I was just listing the specials. Throughout the dinner, I caught him watching me. Not in a creepy way, but in a way that made my skin warm. When his colleagues left, he stayed behind, asked if he could talk to me for a minute. My heart was pounding so hard I thought he could hear it. He told me his name, asked me mine, and then said something I'll never forget. He said, "I know this is forward, but would you want to have coffee with me sometime? Not here. Somewhere you actually want to be." I laughed. I actually laughed in his face because I thought he was joking. Rich men in $1,000 suits don't ask out waitresses. That's not how the world works. But he didn't laugh. He just pulled out his card and placed it on the table. "I'm serious, Nia. Think about it." Then he left a tip that covered my rent for the month and walked out. I stood there holding that card, thinking I'd imagined the whole thing. But Lakeisha brought me back to reality when I told her. She practically screamed through the phone, "Girl, are you crazy? Call that man. When does this ever happen?" And I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I was scared. Scared of looking stupid. Scared of wanting something I couldn't have. Scared of being a fantasy he'd get bored with after a week. But he came back. 3 days later, he walked into that restaurant alone, sat in my section, and ordered coffee. Just coffee. He stayed for 2 hours talking to me between my tables. About books, about life, about dreams we'd given up on and dreams we still held tight. When my shift ended, he asked me again. And this time, I said yes. Our first date was at this small cafe I loved, the kind of place where coffee cost $3 instead of 13. He showed up in jeans and a simple shirt, and we talked for hours. That's when he told me who he really was. Billionaire, CEO of a real estate empire. Buildings I'd walked past 1,000 times, he owned them. And I felt my stomach drop because suddenly this wasn't a fairy tale. This was real life. And real life doesn't work like this. Girls like me don't end up with men like him. I told him that. Right there in the cafe, I said, Dominic, what are we doing? You know this doesn't make sense. And he looked at me with those warm brown eyes and said, the only thing that doesn't make sense is letting you walk away because I'm scared of what people might think. He reached across the table and took my hand. I like you, Nia, not because of some fantasy, because you're real. Because when you talk, I actually want to listen. Because you make me laugh. Is that not enough? And when he kissed me that night, standing outside my apartment building with the streetlight flickering above us, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Wild, reckless, terrifying hope. The next few months were like living in a dream. He took me to places I'd only seen in movies. Fancy restaurants where the waiters knew his name. Charity galas where women wore dresses that cost more than my yearly salary. Private jets to weekend getaways. And every time I felt like I was playing dress up. Like someone would tap me on the shoulder and tell me I didn't belong there. Because I didn't. Not really. His friends smiled at me, but their eyes asked questions. Who is she? Where did she come from? Why her? I heard the whispers at events. Felt the stares when we walked into rooms. There was this one woman at a gala, dripping in diamonds, who looked me up and down and asked what I did for a living. When I told her I was a waitress, her smile turned sharp. How interesting, she said, in a tone that meant the opposite. Dominic tried to shield me from it. He'd hold my hand tighter, introduce me with pride, defend me without me having to ask. But I could see it wearing on him too. Business partners making comments. His father, cold and calculating, questioning his judgment. The pressure building from every direction. I brought him into my world too. He met my mom, sat in our tiny kitchen eating her cooking, asked her about her life with genuine interest. He met Lakeisha, laughed at her jokes, treated her like family. He came to my neighborhood and didn't flinch, didn't act like he was slumming it. He was just present, real. But my mom pulled me aside that night and said, Baby, I love seeing you happy. But men like that, they don't stay. Don't lose yourself trying to fit into his world. Her words haunted me because deep down, I was losing myself. I was changing the way I dressed, the way I talked, constantly worried about saying the wrong thing or being too much or not enough. I was exhausted from trying to prove I deserved to be there. Everything came crashing down one night at a business dinner. His ex-girlfriend showed up. Beautiful, educated, wealthy, connected. Everything I wasn't. She kissed him on the cheek, touched his arm, laughed at inside jokes I didn't understand. And I watched as people looked at them together and nodded, like this made sense. Like she fit where I never would. Later that night, I overheard his business partner talking to him in the hallway. Dom, she's lovely, but think about what you're doing. The optics matter. Your family, your company, you need someone who understands this world, someone who can navigate it with you. And Dominic's silence in response broke something in me. When we got back to his place, I exploded. All the fear, the insecurity, the exhaustion came pouring out. You'll never understand what it's like, I shouted. Every room we walk into, I have to prove myself. I have to work twice as hard just to be treated half as well. And you get to just exist. You don't see the looks, the judgment, the way people dismiss me before I even open my mouth. He tried to tell me he understood that he dealt with it too, but I couldn't hear him. All I could hear was that silence in the hallway when his partner questioned us, so I did what scared girls do. I walked away. I told him we were from different worlds, and trying to force them together was only going to end in pain. And I left before he could see me cry. The weeks after were the darkest I'd had in a long time. I went back to my regular life, my apartment, my shifts, my routine. But everything felt hollow. Lakeisha tried to cheer me up, but even she knew I was broken. You're not crying over him, she finally said. You're crying because you convinced yourself you weren't good enough, and that's the real tragedy here. She was right. I wasn't afraid of Dominic. I was afraid of my own worth. Afraid to believe that I deserved more than scraping by. Afraid to take up space in rooms I'd been taught weren't meant for me. Afraid to be loved loudly instead of quietly. He texted me every day, called, left voicemails. But I didn't respond because I didn't know what to say. Until one night, he showed up at the restaurant, right in the middle of my shift. He didn't make a scene, didn't demand anything. He just sat in my section and waited. When I finally walked over, my heart hammering, he looked up at me with red eyes and said, "Can I say something, please?" I nodded, unable to speak. And right there, with other tables watching, he said, "I've been scared too, Nia. Scared of messing this up. Scared of my world hurting you. Scared that I'm not enough for you because I can't protect you from everything. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. I don't care about the differences. I care about you. And if you'll let me, I want to build a world that's ours. Not mine, not theirs. Ours." I started crying right there in my uniform, mascara running, not caring who saw, because he was choosing me. Not despite who I was, but because of it. And maybe it was time I chose myself too. We didn't fix everything overnight. Relationships aren't fairy tales. But we started building something real. I set boundaries with his world, told people who disrespected me exactly where they could go, stopped shrinking myself to make others comfortable, and Dominic supported every step. He cut off people who couldn't respect me, changed business partners, told his father we were a package deal, and I went back to school, started writing again, chased the dreams I'd buried. He supported me, encouraged me, celebrated every small victory like it was huge. 6 months later, he proposed, not at some fancy restaurant or on a yacht. In my apartment, on a random Tuesday, with takeout containers on the coffee table, he got down on one knee and said, "Marry me, not because it makes sense to anyone else, but because it makes sense to us." I said yes, not because he was rich, not because he could give me things, but because he saw me, all of me, the broken parts, the scared parts, the fierce parts, and he loved them all. So that's my story. Wild, right? Here's what I want you to take away from this. Never let anyone make you feel like you don't belong somewhere, especially in love. Your background, your struggles, your story, that's not baggage. That's power. That's what makes you who you are. And the right person doesn't see it as something to overlook. They see it as something to celebrate. I'm not going to lie and tell you everything is perfect now. We still face challenges. People still judge, but the difference is I'm not trying to fit into anyone's idea of what I should be anymore. I'm just being me. And that's enough. That's always been enough. If this story touched you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever felt like you weren't enough? Let's talk about it because you're not alone in that feeling. And subscribe because I'm sharing more real talk about love, life, and finding yourself in the middle of chaos. Remember this, you're not waiting for someone to complete you. You're already whole. The right person just knows how to celebrate that wholeness instead of trying to change it. Don't shrink yourself for anyone. Don't dim your light because it makes others uncomfortable. Shine. Take up space. Demand the love you deserve. Until next time, keep believing in your worth. Don't let the world convince you that you're asking for too much when you ask to be loved fully. You deserve wild love. The kind that sees you, chooses you, and fights for you. The kind that doesn't make you choose between being yourself and being loved. I'm Nia, and this was my story. Now go write yours.